out to grab somebody's hand.
Jesus, take your place. 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 Jesus, take your place.
God, you've been incredible. We thank you today, God. Thank you for every person that you've allowed to come into this house today. God, thank you. Thank you for your mercy. Thank you for your incredible grace. Oh God, we've not done everything right. We've not done everything in the perfect timing. God, we've not always kept our eyes on you, but you promised us, God, that if we will draw near to you, that you will draw near unto us. And today, God, if there's anybody in this room today that has been suffering with anything on this past week, I ask now, God, that you allow them to draw a little bit closer to you. God, would you stretch down your hand that has no restricted distance, and will you touch somebody's heart right now? That God, we look beyond everything that we've experienced in our lives, and we place our minds on you. For your promise to your word is that we keep our minds stayed on you. You will keep our mind in perfect peace. God, for a parent, for a child, for an educator, a student, for an employer, an employee that's standing in your house today, I ask now, God, that you keep your promise, that you will never leave us nor forsake us, that you will never place more on us than what we can bear. God, I ask today that you stay true to who you are. God, would you open up our hearts now in this moment, this hour, that we can receive a message, a revelation from heaven designed and sent by you. God, would you allow your spirit to fall on the hearts of your people today?
Yes, God.
For you are worthy and we thank you. This is our prayer in Jesus' name. If you believe it, shout amen.
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 Come on and put your hands together to love God. So we give our praise to you. My hand, one more hand, give our praise to you. Man, thank you so much. Quickly, I want you to grab your Bible. If you have your Bible, I want you to grab the Bible with me and go to 1 Kings chapter 19. 1 Kings chapter 19. And for all that can and will, we ask you to stand for the reading of the word, as is the custom here at Impact. 1 Kings chapter 19. And when you get there, you will allow me to read a couple verses for us. I'm going to start at verse 1. I'm reading the New Living Translation. So if you have your Bible application in your hand, just go with me to the NLT. 1 Kings chapter 19, beginning at verse 1. When you get there, if you will, just say amen. Amen. If you're not there, say, hold on a second. Good. And it reads just like this from 1 Kings chapter 19. Y'all let me read about 9 verses for you. It says, when Ahab got home, he told Jezebel everything Elijah had done, including the way he had killed all the prophets of Baal. So Jezebel sent this message to Elijah: may the gods strike me and kill me if by this time tomorrow I have not killed you just as you killed them. Elijah was afraid and fled for his life. He went to Beersheba, a town in Judea or Judah, and he left his servant there. Then he went on alone into the wilderness, traveling all day. He sat down under a solitary broom tree and prayed that he might die. I've had enough, Lord, he said. Take my life, for I'm no better than my ancestors, who have already died. Then he lay down and slept under the broom tree. But as he was sleeping, an angel touched him and told him, "Get up and eat." He looked around, and there beside his head was some bread baked on hot stones and a jar of water. So he ate and drank and lay down again. Then the angel of the Lord came again and touched him and said, "Get up and eat some more, or the journey ahead will be too much for you." So he got up and ate and drank the food given to him, or that gave him enough strength to travel 40 days and 40 nights to Mount Sinai, the mountain of God. There he came to a cave where he spent the night. But the Lord said to him, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" For the sake of preaching, I want to jump back up to verse 4 real quick. Or actually verse 3. Elijah was afraid, and he fled or ran for his life. He went to Beersheba, a town in Judah, and he left his servant there. Then he went alone into the wilderness, traveling all day. He sat down under a solitary broom tree and prayed that he might die. "I've had enough, Lord," he said. "Take my life, for I'm no better than my ancestors who already died." In the second portion of verse number 9, but the Lord said to him, "What are you doing here, Elijah?" Thank God for the reading of the word of God. For the people of God, you may have your seats. Family, for the next few moments, through illustration and through message, I want to speak to you from this thought. Not all wounds are visible. Not all wounds are visible.
Baby, I'm trying. I've applied everywhere.
Well, you're trying as an elder. We have children for this.
Hey, if you don't like me trying, I can just go.
Family, the reality of life sometimes is that we don't understand in totality the nature of depression. When we think of this idea of depression, it's defined in a very interesting way. Depression, by definition, is rather common, but it's a serious matter. It's common, but serious occurrence. Depression is simply a matter of a mood disorder. When the mood disorder starts to take place to the point that we can no longer handle how we feel, how we think, and handle the day-to-day activities of our lives. For simple terms, family, depression is defined as a mental health disorder that is characterized by persistent decreasing or persistent depressed in our everyday lives and everyday activities. So depression has caused many of us in this room, whether it's challenging or not, the reality is that many of you, myself included, in this room right now, the higher percentage of us have suffered from some form of depression. Depression, which is very common but very serious. It's a mood disorder, family, that affects the way that we think, the way we feel, and affects the way that we handle our day-to-day activities. It's a mental health disorder that is characterized by the persistent decrease or decline or consistent or persistent depressed in our mood and our attitude. Depression, family, is a serious matter, and the reality is we don't talk about it enough, but the higher percentage of people in this room right now at some point, or maybe even today, suffer with depression. There's minor areas of depression, but there's several major areas of depression. One of the major areas of depression, out of the top 5 major areas of depression, is called depressive disorder. It's persistent depressive disorder. This is a disorder of depression that's slightly minor but has major moments. It usually lasts. The reason it's called persistent is because it usually lasts for about 2 years. And in this moment, you can have major depressive symptoms or minor depressive symptoms. It's called persistent depressive disorder. But then there's one that's a little bit more major. It's called postpartum depression. Postpartum depression is a little bit more major than a persistent depressive disorder, because postpartum depression is a depression that is fully blown and you experience all the symptoms of depression. And usually postpartum depression happens when a woman is in the midst of pregnancy or after she gives birth to her child. But then the third is also a major form of depression. It's called psychotic depression. And psychotic depression is much like postpartum depression. It's a full-blown form of depression in which you experience all of the symptoms of depression, the sadness, the emotional breakdown, the decrease in life activities, the desire not to want to do anything is fully blown, and it's called psychotic depression. And psychotic depression is a form of depression that's kind of tied with a psychosis. So people that have psychotic depression typically hallucinate really bad, or they typically see things that are very delusional. And then the fourth form of depression is the most common form of depression, family. It's called seasonal depression. And seasonal depression is most common because it happens seasonal. It may happen in one moment and you may not have it the next moment. And many scholars and many doctors and many psychiatrists suggest that seasonal depression typically happens in the winter time. Because when you think about the winter, everything is dying and the sun is not shining as it normally does. And usually it's lifted when spring or summer happens, but that's the most common form that many of us experience is seasonal depression, because you can be depressed in one season of your life, but the moment that the sun begins to shine metaphorically in your life, that depression can be lifted. And the fifth and final form of depression is rather odd because it has its own category. It's bipolar disorder. And bipolar disorder, for some of you are aware, it has its own category. It's a matter of the roller coaster of emotions, when you are down for an extremely long time and then you're up for an extremely long time. A lot of people flirt and play around and misuse the term bipolar, but bipolar disorder is a serious disorder. But bipolar disorder is considered a form of depression because the roller coaster of emotions will cause you to have symptoms that are like depression or are depression. So family, depression is a serious matter. And one of the greatest mistakes and errors that we've allowed the church to make is that we have treated depression like the common cold.
Yes, that's right.
In other words, we have treated depression as if it's developed in one day and goes away in 7 to 10 days. We treated it like a common cold, but the reality is, family, that depression does not spread like germs, or depression is not developed by the spreading of germs, and it does not go away just because you get a prescription antibiotic or an over-the-counter drug. Depression is not the common cold, but the church has made the mistake over the years by allowing people to treat depression like it's the common cold. So we overlook depression. We don't talk about depression. And family, the reality is you just witnessed today how depression is developed. Depression develops over a time in life where you have somebody, parents in the family, you're arguing constantly in front of the child, trying to get your husband or your wife to understand that you're not the only one that needs to work in the house. And in the 21st century, one income is not holding us down the way it used to. So now you stem up arguments in front of your child and don't even realize that that argument that your child saw at an early age was smearing them with the paint of depression. Or you have a situation in which you come and you apply for a job and you sit down and you went to college and graduated, got your degree, but when you sit down with the employer, because they don't want to pay you the money that you're actually worth, then they just tell you that you're overqualified for the job. And that moment and that scenario of life causes paint to be smeared over your pureness. Or maybe you've been in a relationship, and in the relationship you found out that you were loving them a whole lot more than what they were loving you. And in the moment that you wanted to express how you felt and show them who you were, they call you too sensitive and expressive. And in that moment you experienced a breakup. And for anybody that's ever been through a divorce or ever had a serious breakup is almost like death itself. And in that moment, family, it literally smears the paint of depression on your life. Or maybe you see it in our illustration today that when a group of people are hanging out and you want so bad to fit in with that particular group, and you want to just know what they got going on tonight, or how they're going to be hanging out tonight, or where they're going, and you try to fit in, but you find yourself being the outcast. And in moments of being the outcast, it's literally smeared the paint of depression over your pure life. Or maybe, family, that's not enough for you, but maybe you've been in a situation where you come and you looked in the mirror every morning and you're disappointed. Your hair won't lay down just right. Your lineup is tilted to the left just a little bit. Your weight is not what it was when you were 30 and before you had a child. And now you go to work out with Coach P and the Consistency Queens, but you're still tripping about how your body looks. I know I'm talking to somebody right there. Yeah. You look in the mirror and you remember when you used to wear a 1, and now that 1 has added a 0, and it's just messing with you in front of the mirror, and you don't even realize in that moment you're smearing the paint of depression all over your body. Family, depression does not develop in one day, but depression develops over a period of time. Maybe you've been a person in your life that you have been challenged by depression and we're not even aware, because here's what the church does and here's what society does. If we're not careful, we will allow the church and the rhetoric of the church and the rhetoric of people around us to just cause us to try to cover the depression. So you take an imaginary coat or imaginary jacket and you try to wrap it around the paint that's already been smeared on your body. The scenario when you were a child and you watched your parents argue, the moment when you went to a job interview and did not get the job and still had to feed your family, the moment when you tried to hang out with folk that were not like you, not even realizing you didn't have to hang out with them in the first place. We take moments like that when we've been smeared with the paint of depression, and we take invisible, imaginary jackets and literally try to put them on, not knowing, family, that no matter what you try to cover up depression with, the reality is when you take it off, the paint is still there. And our text today is relatively interesting when we look at 1 Kings chapter 19. I would like to introduce you to all the biblical figures in the chapter, but I can't for the sake of time. But I want to introduce you to one main biblical character by the name of Elijah the Tishbite, who's from Gilead. And we don't know a whole lot about Elijah's background. We don't know a whole lot about Elijah's history. We don't know much about how he grew up and anything about his childhood. But what we do know about Elijah is who he is. Elijah the Tishbite, and where he's from is Gilead. Elijah family does not give us a lot of information about him, but we first meet Elijah in 1 Kings chapter 17. He seemingly pops up on the scene out of nowhere, divinely called by God to a peculiar group of people. In fact, if I could bring it home and make it 21st century, Elijah reminds me almost of President Barack Obama, because President Barack Obama seemingly came out of nowhere in 2004 and just took the attention of America before 4 years later being elected as president, simply, I believe, to bring hope to a peculiar group of people. So much like President Barack Obama, I believe Elijah is the ancient biblical version of President Barack Obama. Elijah comes out of nowhere in 1 Kings chapter 17 as a grown man, and he's been sent divinely to bring hope to a peculiar group of people. And when we meet Elijah in 1 Kings chapter 17, he's fully grown, but understand that Elijah is incredibly significant. And he's not only significant for us that are in Christendom, but he's significant for many other practices of life, because Islam, the Muslims, they represent Elijah, and they suggest that Elijah was a messenger of God. So every year they sit back and imagine that when God comes back to end the world, that Elijah is coming back with God. Not even only the Islamic brothers and sisters or the Muslims, but also those in the Roman Catholic Church. They commemorate Elijah every year on July the 20th by having a feast for him. And then even the Jews, every year at their annual Passover, they make sure that at the table is an empty space with a full glass of wine, so Elijah can seemingly be welcome to the table. So family, Elijah is not just somebody that's significant in biblical times, but Elijah is still significant in our lives today. I want to talk to you about Elijah, the significant, prominent, prestigious biblical figure that's still relevant in our lives today. Elijah, family, is only one of two people in the Bible that did not die. Elijah was called up into heaven in a chariot of fire and never died. Just him and Enoch are the only two biblical figures that never died. Elijah was not only just a healer, but he was a miracle worker that performed 16 different miracles. And he was a mentor who mentored a young boy by the name of Elisha. And Elisha doubled the miracles and had 32. So Elijah, family, is very significant. He's very prominent, not only biblically, but in today's time. And as prominent and significant as Elijah was, he still dealt with depression.
Amen.
Can I help y'all real quick? The reality is, family, you can be as decorated as you want to be and still suffer from depression. You can have a pretty face, you can have the best MAC makeup or Sephora makeup, you can have the best hairstylist, you can get the best haircut, you can have the nicest clothes, you can live in the biggest house and still suffer with depression. You know how many people got 12 bedrooms in their house but sit in one bedroom with the lights off because they suffer from depression? You know how many people got cars that they can choose from each garage but find themselves sitting in front of their house in the car trying to figure out their whole life? Because you can be decorated with accolades and degrees and pretty face and money and still have depression. Elijah, as prominent, significant, and decorated as he is, still suffered from depression. And when we meet Elijah in 1 Kings chapter 19, Elijah has just won a battle. He's just won a significant competition. And we have to look at the competition. We got to go back to 1 Kings chapter 18 when Elijah is going up to battle against Ahab. Now understand that Ahab was the 7th elected king of Israel, and he was married to a woman you probably heard of named Jezebel. He was married to Jezebel, and because of his marriage to Jezebel, Ahab has been considered the most evil king in all of history. And in 1 Kings chapter 18, we find that Elijah, Tiger, has challenged Ahab to a battle. He said, hey, meet me up on Mount Carmel, bring all your boys, and I'm going to show up by myself. So Ahab, the king, shows up on Mount Carmel with 850 prophets, 850 people, but Elijah shows up with one person. Let me help you real quick. Coach P wanted me to insert this, so I'm going to insert it my way. Coach P, this is the only time that the Golden State Golden Rule strength in numbers does not apply. Because here it is. He had talks a little trash and he starts mocking them, and the Bible says he starts taunting them. Where your God at now? Why haven't your God showed up? So they start cutting themselves and trying to shed blood over the altar, and Elijah is taunting them, but their God don't show up. Elijah let them go first, so then Elijah steps up, and I like the way 1 Kings 18 says, and it makes me feel good. Elijah is so confident in his God now that Elijah pours water on the altar. This is the first time that you ever seen water catch fire. He pours water on the altar, and he's trying to show them a point, and he starts praying, and when he prays, God sends fire down and burns all the fire. Let me help you real quick. Elijah tells him, look what our God has done, and because my God sent fire down and your God did not send fire down, that suggests that my God is the true and living God. Ahab loses the battle, so Elijah destroys the 850 prophets, which now opens the door to 1 Kings chapter 19. Ahab loses the battle. He loses 850 prophets. Elijah has gained victory, and Ahab gets home and tells his wife. Okay, y'all just understand. You mean you are the king? Yeah. And you gonna cry and go home and tell your wife on me? He goes home. He don't call up more prophets. He don't call up more kings. But he goes home and he tells his wife. The Bible says to us in 1 Kings chapter 19, verse 2, that when Ahab shared the information with Jezebel, Queen Jezebel says, I got it. She sends a text message. I'm trying to make this 21st century so y'all can see it. She sends a text message. She has an Android, and Elijah has an XR. So she sends a green text message to Elijah. Y'all know how we feel about the green text message when you get them. That lets you know they ain't got no Apple product. So Jezebel had no Apple product, but she sends a message to Elijah. And she says, Elijah, as sure as I'm alive, I'd rather die before about this time tomorrow I'm going to kill you. And the Bible says in verse 3 of 1 Kings 19 that and Elijah becomes afraid and he runs for his life. Let me drop this nugget on you real quick, family. Life victories does not cure or prevent depression. Amen. Let me help you understand. Just because you gain victory in your life, just because the relationship got better, just because you got a new job, does not imply that it cures or it prevents depression. Because as I mentioned earlier, there are some people right now that in the natural realm, in the natural eye, are living their best life, but are going home at night and can't sleep, they can't eat, they're stressing. And you know what I learned, family? That we get so upset and we complain about the humility of life sometimes. You know how we want money just to go travel, and we look at athletes and celebrities, and we desire to have the money that they have, but we don't even realize that more of them have more problems. What was said like this by Biggie and Mason, by P. Diddy back in the day, the more money, the more problems. And sometimes you gotta understand, be careful what you're asking God for, because if you're not ready to handle the blessing that God has in store for you, the blessing may drive you crazy. Yes, sir. Victories in life does not prevent or does not cure depression. You can get victory after victory and still be depressed. Elijah runs for his life. I mean, he's still depressed. He's still in a state of depression after he has just won what arguably could be the greatest battle of all time. And after that, because of a message from Jezebel, he now begins his stage of depression. And Elijah's life, family, teaches us several things about how depression is developed, how depression starts. The first thing that it teaches us is that depression is developed through fear. Let me show you in 1 Kings 19, verse 3, it says this, it says, and he became afraid, and he ran for his life. And literally we think that naturally that fear comes from us that causes depression. But as we've seen through our illustration today, through the presentation of Penny and Randy at the very end of our presentation, that sometimes you can have a creative idea to stop working for other people and making them wealthy and desire to do your own thing and start your own business and become an entrepreneur. But the fear of other people and the insecurities of other people, that's why you got to be careful about the people that are around you. Because the people that are afraid to step out on faith, their faith scare can scare you into a place of fear. And fear, family, studied by psychologists, is the #1 cause of depression. And some of us found ourselves laid up at night, can't sleep, suffering from depression because you've been afraid to step out on faith. And let me help you real quick. Because we get in church and we cover it up. And we shout, and we scream, and we sing songs, and we quote scriptures that our heart don't believe. So we say to ourselves that, and if I have faith the size of a grain of a mustard seed, I can say to the mountain, move, but you say it with your mouth, but it's not in your heart. And so many of us right now, you've been afraid to leave Hazlehurst. I don't know why. You've been afraid to step out and apply for the job you really want. I don't know why. You've been afraid to date again after you were hurt before. And the reality is that fear will develop depression. Elijah, the text says in verse 3 of 1 Kings 19, that after Jezebel sends him a message, he now becomes afraid. And the reality again, as the presentation showed us with Penny and with Randy, that you can be in one state of mind and somebody else can speak that negativity that affects where you are.
That's right.
Family, the fear of somebody else, Mariah, the fear of another person, or the insecurity of them can affect where you are in your state of mind. And you got to be careful not to let people around you that don't have faith enough to push the visions and dreams and desires that you have for your life. And now it all makes sense to me. Now I can understand why God would tell us through text that God did not give us the spirit of fear, but the spirit of courage and a sound mind. Because God understood that, family, if you operate in fear, it develops depression. Number one, Elijah shows us that fear is the first cause to depression. But the second cause that he shows us is that isolation is a cause of depression. Watch what the text says in 1 Kings chapter 19, verse 4. It says that after he becomes afraid and he runs for his life, it says that he runs on into the wilderness alone. He goes off, family, into a place of isolation by himself. But let me help you, because I wanted to flip this, because many of us think that isolation is just you sitting up in a room closed off by yourself. That's just one form. But some of us, we don't isolate ourselves in a room by ourselves because we're afraid to be alone. Okay, I'm off the real word, and y'all look at me kind of like I'm crazy. But some of us will never be in physical isolation because you're scared to be by yourself. Okay, y'all gonna make me go there. I'm trying not to go there, but some of you date people after one person after the next because you're scared to be by yourself. Some of you, since we got high schoolers in here today, bounce from friendship to friendship because you're afraid to appreciate yourself. Some of us go church to church. Y'all ain't gonna help me right now. Because you're afraid to spend time by yourself. Some people insert themselves in other groups because they're afraid to be by. You know y'all ain't got nothing in common. You know they talked about you. You know they have lied on you before. But you'll insert yourself because you're afraid to be alone. So many of us don't suffer from physical isolation. But many of us suffer from mental isolation. Because let me help you. You can be standing in a group of people and still be mentally isolated. You can be at work on your job, smiling at everybody that comes in the door, but still be mentally isolated. You can be in love with your husband or in love with your wife and living in a house, cooking them breakfast, and still be mentally isolated. And some of us in the room right now, you don't even realize it, but for the last few years or last few months, your mind seems to travel everywhere when you're around people because mentally you've been isolated. And this is what happens. You heard the cliche before. And an idle mind is the devil's workshop. And sometimes when your body is doing stuff that you're not normally doing, it's because your mind has been isolated. And the Bible suggests this, and I want to shout you right here. But if you keep your mind today, in our illustration, see two young ladies come walking out, speaking about their afternoon and their evening. And Serenity standing alone, trying to insert herself into the group when the group is trying to exclude you. And family, you can be standing amongst other family members, you can be standing amongst employees and other student body and peers and still find yourself being isolated. And you got to understand this, family, that every group ain't meant for you to be in anyway. The enemy desires to get you in a place of isolation, and the trick is to make you think that isolation is only physical, but isolate your mind. And an isolated mind, family, will develop into depression. Elijah in the text has isolated himself in the wilderness. Let me help y'all real quick. I feel real good.
Come on, teach us.
The wilderness is your place of comfort.
Amen.
Say it again.
See, Elijah had been in the wilderness before, Miss Zoe, but now, after being out and gaining victories in his life, and the moment that depression strikes, here it is, he goes back to what used to be comfortable.
Yes.
You think people that go back and relapse on drugs and alcohol, you think it was their desire and their passion to just go back and do drugs and alcohol again? No. It's the fact that when a trauma happens in your life, if you have not developed a relationship with the right one, then the trauma in your life will make you go back to doing the same stuff that you used to do because that was your place of comfort. You want to know how you can tell if you're struggling in an area of depression? Because every time something happens in your life, you go back to the same people that hurt you, that lied on you, that cheated you. That's your wilderness in Elijah.
Yes.
Because of one message from somebody he had already defeated, he goes back to isolation in the wilderness. And some of us in the room right now, family, you have already re-entered your wilderness because you are afraid to step outside of your comfort.
Jesus.
Isolation, number two. You get out of your way, isolation develops into depression. And then the third thing that Elijah shows us that develops into depression is spiritual location. Let me help you. Let me show you what the text says. And clause B of verse number 4 of 1 Kings chapter 19, after Elijah has ran, he's afraid, he's ran for his life. He's ran alone into the wilderness. And now the text says that he's alone in the wilderness, the location, and it says he begins to pray to God, take my life. Okay, let me go back. All of us don't ride the same bus. Let me go back and help us understand. It says, he goes into the wilderness, geographical location. And then he begins to pray, God, take my life.
Jesus.
So his location has shifted because of depression. And now his prayer has reversed. Because he used to pray to God, make it rain. But now he's praying to God, after victory, take my life.
Yes. Jesus.
And family, what has happened is that his spiritual location is in the wrong place. And the greatest form of depression or cause of depression is when you lose your in syncness with God.
Yes.
And if you understand Elijah, he was always, Miss Joanne, from the time we meet him in 1 Kings chapter 17, Elijah was always in sync with God. But at this stage, family, because of one message that he received from a queen who he had already defeated her husband, he falls into a moment of depression, and now his spiritual location is in the wrong place. To the fact, family, that his prayer is reversed. He's no longer praying for God to bring abundance and make it rain. He's now praying for God to take his life. Can I help y'all real quick? His depression has developed into him being suicidal. Y'all ain't ready for this yet. This is a man of God.
Yes.
That preaches and teaches God.
Yes.
That is one of the most prominent figures in our books,
Yes.
called the Bible. Elijah is remembered by many practices of life. Elijah is one of two people that did not die. And that he's still in such a place of depression that he's suicidal. If I could bring it to the 21st century, he has the status of a Jay-Z or Beyonce, multi-billionaire. He has prestige in our time. He's well known in our time. He has the blue check by his name on Twitter and on Instagram. He's popular, he's well known, but he's still in a place depressed to the point that he's suicidal. And parents, can I talk to you for a moment? Watch your kids close.
Yes. Right.
Because you see your daughter or your son doing well in athletics. You see your daughter or your son doing well academically. You see your daughter or your son around friends and got plenty of friends, but you never know when underneath all the friends,
That's right.
underneath the great academics,
Yes.
underneath the athletics, when your child is dealing with depression.
Yes.
Because what we don't be honest about is that we don't realize that our behaviors, according to the Bible, we be passed down generation to generation to third generation. And some of that stuff, if you have not prayed to cover that stuff in your family, then generational curses will travel down your family, and you will have a child that's as prominent as Elijah, but still suffers with depression.
Yes.
Elijah's family is in a place where he's suicidal. Three things that Elijah shows us through this text that develops into depression. Fear develops into depression. Isolation, both physical and mental isolation. And then his spiritual location develops into depression. But I'm closing the message like this. If you read a little bit farther, because a lot of times we like to stop, but if you read a little bit farther, you will notice that Elijah is sitting underneath a solitary broom tree in the wilderness. And I'm upset because I didn't get my tree built on the stage, but y'all can metaphorically see Mariah sitting underneath the broom tree. What that broom is? Broom tree. And she's our lady version of Elijah. She's Elijah. And the text says that Elijah is in and under and suffering from depression, Mariah. And he's sitting underneath the solitary broom tree because his life has been smeared. We don't know about his family genetics. We don't know. His parents are not mentioned. Smeared. He's been through trying time after trying time because we never know where Elijah lived, but we know he always showed up at folks' house.
Yeah.
Smeared. There's been times before where Elijah had to ask the woman in Zarephath for a piece of bread because he didn't have no food to eat. Smeared. If I can bring the 21st century, our illustration showed us that there's times in your life from childhood to college to the work field to relationship to friendships where you can be smeared with the paint of depression. And sometimes, family, it's tough because we ask ourselves, how will I wipe myself clean? How will I be clean of the depression? How can I get this paint off of me? How can I get the stain off of me? But what happens with Elijah is the Bible says, that sounded real churchy, the Bible says that an angel comes to Elijah and brings Elijah food to eat. Elijah is shaken and awakened by the angel to find the biscuits cooking by the sun on the rock. I just did something that y'all didn't catch. Elijah is awakened by an angel to see biscuits cooking by the sun on the rock. I'm not suggesting to you the S-U-N. So, all right.
We got you.
There's an S-O-N, sun. There's an S-U-N, solar, sun. But I'm not suggesting to you learned that anytime we see a rock, that he is my rock and my fortress. Peter, upon this rock shall I build my church, and the gates of hell shall not prevail. I shall be your rock. So I'm not suggesting to you in the natural what your eyes see, that the sun, the S-U-N, is burning the biscuits on a natural rock. But what I'm suggesting, family, is that when depression strikes your life, yes, it's important for you to find you a good therapist. And no, you're not crazy because you go to therapy. But one thing you got to do when the therapist is not working, when mama and daddy are not answering the phone, when your friends are pushing you away, you got to get your biscuits, sit up on the rock, and let the sun shine. Listen, it says, Mariah, that you as Elijah are sitting under the broom tree, and you've been stained and you've been painted with depressive disorders. And an angel comes, places a rock, places biscuits on the rock, and the sun crystals the biscuits. Y'all ain't like me. I like the bottom of my biscuits just a little bit brown. I don't like to bite into dough, so I want to know that my biscuits are a little brown. And so it says that the angel comes, and Elijah wakes up, and he eats the food, and he drinks the water that's been applied in the jar. I really want to be really theological, but we're going to talk about it in the Bible study on Wednesday, where the water comes from. So the water is in the jar. And Elijah eats the biscuit, and he drinks the water. It has not rained. But the Bible says that when Jesus was pierced, that blood and water came. We're going to talk about it. So water in the jar. But Elijah does what many of us do. He eats these little Red Lobster biscuits, drinks his cold water, and he goes back to sleep. It's in your Bible. It's in your Bible. And the Bible says, yet another angel comes and wakes him up again. But I'm going to skip that because I want to get to verse 9. But verse 9 says, after the two angels visit, then God shows up. And God says to Elijah, what are you doing here, Elijah? Family, how you know his spiritual location was messed up is because God had to ask him, why are you sitting underneath the broom tree? And family, what I'm saying to some of you is God is asking, why are you sitting in a place of depression when I've shown you that you can overcome, when I gave you the word that you can survive, when I helped you, when you've seen what it was like to be down and I lifted you back up. So God is asking some of us the question today, why are you still sitting here? Family, I believe that God is not just take and just wipe all your pain away. But I believe, Mariah, that God begins to smear it all in one place. I believe that God leaves the paint stain simply to remind us of where I brought you from. See, family, some of you, much like Mariah, have been painted in your purity with paint depressive stains. And the challenge of society has told you to try to make the stains clean again. But as much as this is washable paint, that white shirt still won't ever be the same.
Right.
But what I've learned and what I believe, that if the Bible says, one of my favorite scriptures in Romans 8:28